The message arrived at Velkari High Command during the night cycle, when only junior officers staffed the communication arrays. It was a simple status report, the kind that usually required nothing more than filing and forgetting. But this report was different. The 8th Reconnaissance Vessel sent to probe Earth's defensive perimeter had missed its scheduled contact window. Again. Lieutenant Kress stared at the blinking notification on her screen. She had been trained to recognize patterns, and this pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. 8 ships, 8 missions to the unremarkable system that humans called home. 8 failures to return. She forwarded the report to her superior with a note suggesting that perhaps someone should investigate. The note was ignored. 3 levels above her, Fleet Admiral Torvex was celebrating his 42nd year of service to the Dominion. His quarters were filled with officers who owed their careers to his patronage, all of them eager to praise his wisdom and vision. Torvex had built an empire within an empire, conquering 12 star systems through a combination of overwhelming force and political cunning. He was not a man who worried about missing scout ships. When his aide finally brought him the report the next morning, Torvex barely glanced at it before tossing it aside. "Navigation error," he said, "or pirates. The outer regions are filled with scavengers who prey on isolated vessels." "Sir, this is the 8th ship we have lost in that sector," the aide reminded him carefully. Torvex waved his hand dismissively. "The humans are a minor species occupying a single system. They possess no fleet worth mentioning, no military tradition, no expansion ambitions. They are farmers and merchants, nothing more. Our ships are being lost to accident and misfortune, not enemy action." The aide knew better than to argue. He filed the report with the others and returned to his duties. On Earth, in a building that looked like any other office complex in Geneva, Secretary General Chen Wei was reviewing the same information from a very different perspective. Before him lay detailed reports on all 8 Velkari incursions, complete with sensor logs, communication intercepts, and tactical analyses. The humans knew exactly what had happened to those ships. They knew because they had captured every single one. Chen Wei was a patient man. He had spent his entire career in diplomacy, navigating the complex relationships between Earth and the dozens of alien civilizations that made up the galactic community. He believed in dialogue, in negotiation, in finding common ground. But even his patience had limits. "They will send another," said General Amara Okonkwo, who sat across from him. She was the commander of Earth's defensive forces, a position she had held for 15 years. In that time, she had transformed humanity's military from a scattered collection of system patrol boats into something far more capable, something that the rest of the galaxy had not yet begun to suspect. "I know," Chen Wei replied, "and we will capture that one too, just as we captured the others." "For how long?" Okonkwo asked. "We have nearly 400 Valkyrie personnel in our custody now. We are feeding them, housing them, providing medical care. We are treating them better than their own government treats its citizens. And what do we get in return? More ships, more incursions, more disrespect." Chen Wei understood her frustration. The Valkyrie Dominion had been probing Earth's borders for decades, treating human space as their personal playground. Every diplomatic protest was met with denial. Every request for explanation was answered with condescension. The Galactic Assembly, dominated by the older species, simply looked the other way. "I will address the Assembly tomorrow," Chen Wei said. "One final warning. One final chance for them to change course." Okonkwo leaned forward. "And when they ignore you? When they laugh in your face like they always do? Then we stop asking politely." The Galactic Assembly met in a massive orbital station above the neutral world of Kethris Prime. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the Great Chamber, arranged in tiers according to the age and influence of their civilizations. Humanity's delegation sat near the bottom, surrounded by other young species who had only recently achieved interstellar travel. Secretary General Chen Wei walked to the speaker's platform with the calm confidence of a man who had rehearsed this moment many times. The chamber fell quiet, though more from curiosity than respect. Human addresses were rare and usually unimportant. "Distinguished representatives," Chen Wei began, "I come before you today to deliver a formal warning. For the past 30 years, Vessels belonging to the Valkyrie Dominion have repeatedly entered human space without authorization. These incursions have been documented, reported, and protested through proper channels. Our concerns have been dismissed. Our sovereignty has been ignored. This ends now. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Valkyrie representative, a tall, gray-skinned figure named Ambassador Toreth, was already rising to his feet. "I demand the right of response," Toreth declared. The assembly speaker, an ancient being whose species had been traveling the stars when humanity still lived in caves, granted the request with a weary nod. "The human representative speaks of incursions and violations," Toreth said, his voice dripping with contempt. "What he fails to mention is that human space lies along several important trade routes. Our vessels pass through that region as a matter of navigation, not aggression. If some of our ships have accidentally crossed poorly marked boundaries, this is hardly cause for such dramatic pronouncements." Chen Wei did not react to the insult. "The boundaries are clearly marked according to galactic standard protocols. Your ships did not accidentally wander across them. They penetrated deep into our territory, conducted active scans of our installations, and ignored all communications ordering them to withdraw." "Prove it," Toreth challenged. "We have." Chen Wei activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed detailed sensor logs, communication records, and trajectory data for all 8 Valkyrie vessels. The evidence was comprehensive and damning. "This proves nothing," Toreth insisted, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Sensor logs can be fabricated. Communications can be invented. The Dominion categorically denies any deliberate violation of human space." "Then explain what happened to your ships," Chen Wei said quietly. The chamber went silent. Toreth's gray skin paled slightly. "Our ships encountered technical difficulties, navigation errors, perhaps pirate activity. These things happen in space." 8 times? In the same region? To military vessels specifically tasked with reconnaissance? "Coincidence." Chen Wei smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. "Very well. Since coincidence has claimed 8 of your ships, I offer this warning in the hope of preventing further coincidences. The next Valkyrie vessel to enter human space without authorization will be treated as a hostile combatant. There will be no more protests, no more diplomatic notes, only consequences." Toreth actually laughed. The sound echoed through the great chamber, and several other representatives joined in. The idea of humanity threatening the Valkyrie Dominion was absurd. The Dominion controlled 200 star systems. Humanity had one. "The Assembly thanks the human representative for his passionate address," the speaker said. "This matter will be taken under advisement." Chen Wei gathered his materials and walked out of the chamber without looking back. He had done what he came to do. The warning had been delivered formally and publicly. When the consequences came, no one would be able to claim they had not been told. Back on Earth, General Okonkwo was waiting for his report. She watched the recording of the assembly session with growing anger, her hands tightening into fists when Toreth laughed. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think we are primitive," Chen Wei corrected, "incapable of defending ourselves, unworthy of consideration." "Then we change their thinking." "Not yet." Chen Wei sat down heavily. "We give them one more chance. When their 9th ship comes, we capture it just like the others. We return their crews unharmed. We demonstrate that we could have destroyed them, but chose mercy instead. If they still refuse to listen after that, they will refuse," Okonkwo said with certainty. "Pride will not let them accept what we are offering. They will see our restraint as weakness, our mercy as fear. Perhaps, but we have to try. We have to know when the time comes to act that we gave them every possible opportunity to choose peace." In the depths of Valkyrie space, Fleet Admiral Torvex was assembling a new mission. The human speech at the assembly had irritated him, like a small insect buzzing around his head. It needed to be swatted. He chose his newest heavy cruiser for the task, the Dominion's Pride. He staffed it with his most ambitious officers, young men and women eager to prove themselves, and he gave command to Captain Sarath, a rising star in the fleet who had never known failure. "Chart their defenses," he ordered. "Locate their shipyards, their weapon platforms, their communications hubs. Show them that the Dominion goes where it pleases." Sarath saluted sharply. And if they resist? Torvex smiled coldly. Then teach them the cost of resistance. The Dominion's pride departed 3 days later, its crew confident and eager. They had the finest ship in the fleet, the best weapons, the most advanced sensors. The humans were farmers and merchants, primitives who had barely mastered interstellar travel. What possible threat could they pose? Captain Sereth stood on her bridge as her ship entered the outer reaches of human space. She had reviewed all available intelligence on humanity, which was not much. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were defensive and timid. This would be easy. Begin active scanning, she ordered. I want a complete map of this system before we reach the inner planets. Her crew rushed to obey. Sensor arrays powered up, sweeping the darkness of space with invisible beams of energy. Data began flowing into the ship's computers. Captain, her tactical officer reported, I am detecting a single human vessel on intercept course. Small craft, minimal armament. Shall I prepare weapons? Sereth waved dismissively. Not yet. Let them come. I want them to see what a real warship looks like. The human vessel continued its approach. As it drew closer, Sereth saw that it was even smaller than she had expected. Barely more than a patrol boat, really. She felt a wave of contempt wash over her. These were the people who had threatened the Dominion? These were the farmers who thought they could dictate terms to an empire that spanned 200 worlds? Her communications officer looked up suddenly. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the human ship. Put it through. A calm voice filled the bridge. It was a woman's voice speaking in perfectly accented Velkari. Velkari vessel, this is Commander Sarah Vance of the United Earthship Patience. You have entered human space without authorization. In accordance with the formal warning delivered to the Galactic Assembly, you are ordered to reverse course immediately. You have 1 hour to comply. This is your only warning. Sereth laughed. Her crew joined in. The idea that this tiny ship was ordering them to leave was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. Human vessel, she replied. This is Captain Serath of the Dominion's Pride. The Velkari Dominion does not recognize your authority to exclude us from any region of space. Stand aside or be destroyed. The channel went silent. Captain, her tactical officer said, the human ship has stopped broadcasting. It is holding position. Let them watch, Serath said. Full speed ahead. Show them what happens to those who threaten the Dominion. The Dominion's pride surged forward, engines burning bright against the stars. In 1 hour, everything would change, but not in the way Captain Serath expected. The hour passed slowly on the bridge of the Dominion's pride. Captain Serath spent it reviewing tactical displays and imagining the commendations she would receive when she returned home. The human vessel remained stationary, a tiny dot on her sensors that seemed almost pathetic in its isolation. Her crew shared her confidence. They joked about the primitive humans and their ridiculous threats. Some of them placed bets on how quickly the small patrol ship would flee when Serath ordered weapons powered. Others wondered if the humans would even try to fight. 30 seconds remaining, her navigation officer announced. Serath straightened in her command chair. All hands to battle stations. Weapons officer, prepare to target the human vessel on my command. Yes, Captain. The final seconds ticked away. Nothing happened. The hour has passed, Serath said with satisfaction. Target the human ship and... Captain, her communications officer interrupted, his voice suddenly uncertain. We are receiving another transmission. Put it through. The same calm voice filled the bridge. Commander Vance spoke as if she were reading from a prepared script, her tone neither angry nor fearful. Velkari vessel, your response has been noted. You were given a lawful order to withdraw and you refused. You were warned that there would be consequences and you ignored that warning. This communication serves as your final notice. You have 5 minutes to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you comply, no harm will come to you or your crew. If you refuse, we will disable your ship by force. This is not a negotiation. This is your final warning. Serath stared at her view screen in disbelief. The tiny human ship was ordering her to surrender, a heavy cruiser of the Velkari Dominion, one of the most powerful vessels in the fleet. The arrogance was beyond comprehension. That ship has lost its mind, her first officer muttered. Or they are buying time for reinforcements, her tactical officer suggested. Perhaps they have called for help. Sarath shook her head. Our sensors show no other vessels within range. They are alone, and they are bluffing. She leaned forward in her chair. All weapons, target that patrol ship. Fire on my command. Targeting, her weapons officer confirmed. Then his voice changed. Captain, I am having difficulty acquiring lock. Explain. The human ship. It appears to be moving. Quickly. I am attempting to track, but... He stopped, confusion spreading across his face. Captain, sensors are now showing the target in multiple locations simultaneously. Sarath moved to his station and stared at the display. Where there had been one contact, there were now 17. The human vessels seemed to exist in 17 different places at once, each echo moving in a different direction. That is impossible, she said. It must be a malfunction. Run a diagnostic. Already running. All systems show normal operation. Captain, our targeting computer cannot determine which contact is real. A cold sensation began to form in Sarath's stomach. This was not how the mission was supposed to proceed. This was not how primitives were supposed to behave. Helm, bring us to evasive pattern Delta. Weapons, switch to manual targeting. Find that ship and destroy it. Her crew scrambled to obey, but the chaos only increased. The 17 contacts became 34, then 68. They surrounded the Dominion's pride in a sphere of phantom images, each one indistinguishable from the others. Captain, her engineering officer called from his station, I am detecting power fluctuations throughout the ship. Our primary systems are experiencing unexplained interference. Source? Unknown. It appears to be affecting our computer cores directly. The lights on the bridge flickered. Several consoles went dark momentarily before returning to life. Sarath gripped the arms of her chair as the deck beneath her feet seemed to shudder. What is happening to my ship? No one had an answer. On the view screen, the phantom images suddenly collapsed back into a single contact. But it was no longer alone. 11 other vessels had appeared around it, forming a perfect formation that bracketed the Dominion's pride on all sides. These new ships were larger than the patrol vessel, though still smaller than Sarath's cruiser. They had emerged from nowhere, without warning, without any sensor detection. They were simply there, as if they had always been there and had only now chosen to be seen. Where did they come from? Sarath demanded. Unknown, her tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. There was no approach, no jump signature, no engine emissions. They just appeared. The calm voice of Commander Vance returned. Captain Sarath, I apologize for the theatrical display. We have found that visual demonstrations are sometimes necessary to establish proper context for negotiations. Allow me to explain your current situation. Sarath wanted to order an attack, wanted to prove that the Dominion would not be intimidated, but something held her back. Perhaps it was the 12 ships surrounding her vessel. Perhaps it was the way her own systems had been compromised without any apparent effort. I am listening, she said through clenched teeth. Thank you. Your ship has been disabled. Your weapons are offline. Your engines will not respond to commands. Your communications are being filtered through our systems. This was accomplished without firing a single shot, without causing any casualties, without damaging your vessel in any permanent way. We could have destroyed you the moment you crossed our border. We chose not to. Sarath checked her displays. Every word was true. Her weapons showed green status but refused to fire. Her engines reported full power but would not engage. Her communication array was functioning, but only for this conversation. How? She whispered. Humanity developed stealth technology decades ago, Vance explained. We also developed electronic warfare capabilities that your people have not yet imagined. We saw no reason to advertise these achievements. We are not an aggressive species, Captain. We do not seek conquest or glory. We only wish to be left alone. Then why the threats? Why the ultimatum at the assembly? Because being left alone requires that others respect our boundaries. Your government has failed to do so. 8 times your ships have entered our space. 8 times we have captured those ships and their crews. 8 times we have waited for someone to notice, to ask questions, to seek a diplomatic resolution. No one came, so we were forced to speak more loudly. Sarath's mind reeled. 8 ships captured? The crews still alive? This was not at all what she had been told. She had been told that the missing vessels were lost to accidents and pirates. "You are lying," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I am not, but I understand why you might think so. Your leaders have not been honest with you about this situation. They preferred to ignore the evidence rather than admit that their assumptions about humanity were wrong." Sarath looked around her bridge. Her crew stared back at her with fear in their eyes. They were helpless, completely at the mercy of an enemy they had been taught to despise. And that enemy was offering them, what? Conversation? "What do you want?" she asked. "Right now? I want you to order your crew to stand down and prepare for boarding. Our Marines will secure your ship. No one will be harmed. You will be treated with dignity and respect. Your crew will be provided with food, medical care, and comfortable quarters. You will remain our guests until this matter is resolved through proper diplomatic channels." "Guests," Sarath repeated bitterly. "You mean prisoners. I mean guests. The distinction will become clear shortly." Sarath considered her options. She could order her crew to resist, but with what? Their weapons did not work. Their engines did not respond. The humans controlled every system on her ship. Resistance would only get her people killed. "Stand down," she ordered quietly. "All hands stand down. Prepare for boarding." Her first officer looked at her with shock. "Captain, you cannot—" "I can, and I must." Sarath cut him off. "We are beaten. I will not throw away lives in a pointless gesture." The boarding was efficient and professional. Human Marines entered through the primary airlock in perfect formation, their weapons ready but not raised. They wore light armor and moved with practiced precision, securing each section of the ship before advancing to the next. Sarath watched them work with reluctant admiration. These were not the primitive farmers she had been promised. These were trained soldiers, every bit as disciplined as her own crew. Perhaps more so. Commander Vance came aboard personally. She was a tall woman with dark skin and gray-streaked hair, her uniform simple but immaculate. She approached Sarath with something that looked almost like sympathy in her eyes. "Captain, I regret that this was necessary. We take no pleasure in humiliating proud officers." "Then why do it?" "Because your government left us no choice. We asked, we pleaded, we warned, we demonstrated. Nothing worked. Perhaps this will." Vance gestured for Sarath to follow her to the primary viewport. Outside, the 12 human ships held their formation around the captured cruiser. But there was something else, something larger looming in the distance. "What is that?" Sarath asked. "That is our destination, a facility that I think you need to see." As the Dominion's Pride was towed toward the distant structure, Sarath began to make out its details. It was enormous, larger than anything the Velkari could have built. Docking bays lined its surface, each one occupied by a vessel. Velkari vessels. "Those are our ships," Sarath breathed. "Yes, the 7 that came before yours. They are all intact. We have maintained them carefully." "And their crews?" "Alive and well. Would you like to speak with them?" Sarath nodded, unable to form words. Vance touched a control on her wrist communicator. "Station Command, this is Vance. Please connect me with Captain Korath of the Boundless Sky." A moment later, a familiar voice filled the air. Sarath recognized it immediately. Korath had been one of Admiral Torvex's favorites, assigned to the 3rd Reconnaissance Mission 3 years ago. His ship had vanished without a trace. "Sarath, is that you?" "Korath, you are alive. We are all alive. All of us from all the ships. The humans have treated us well. Better than well. They gave us quarters, food, entertainment. They provided medical care to our wounded. They even let us maintain our own command structures." Sarath struggled to understand. Why? Why would they do this? Korath was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something like shame. "Because they were waiting for someone to ask what happened to us. They captured us instead of killing us because they hoped our government would notice our absence and seek answers. They wanted to open negotiations, to resolve this peacefully, but no one came. No one even asked. We were told you died," Sarath said. "Navigation errors, pirates, equipment failures." Yes, the humans told us that was probably what our leaders would say. They predicted that our government would rather ignore our disappearance than admit the truth. They were right. Commander Vance watched this exchange without interrupting. When it ended, she turned to Sarath with a gentle expression. Do you understand now, Captain? We have no desire for war with your people. We have no interest in conquest or revenge. We only want to be respected, to have our borders honored, to live in peace. We have given your government every opportunity to choose that path. Instead, they sent you. Sarath looked at the station, at the captured ships, at the human vessels surrounding her own. She thought about everything she had been taught about humanity, everything she had believed. It was all wrong. What happens now, she asked. Now you join your fellow officers at the station. You will be comfortable there. And soon, very soon, we will send a message to your government. We will tell them what has happened here. We will return all of you, every crew member from every ship, unharmed and in good health. We will offer them peace. They will not accept. Perhaps not, but we have to try. We have to give them every chance to choose wisely. Vance's expression hardened slightly. And if they refuse, then they will have made that choice with full knowledge of what they face, and the consequences will be on their heads, not ours. Sarath was escorted to the station and given quarters that were better than her cabin aboard the Pride. She spent the next several days talking with the other captured officers, learning their stories, understanding just how thoroughly humanity had been underestimated. And slowly, unwillingly, she began to hope that her government would see reason. But deep in her heart, she knew they would not. The human station was called Haven. Sarath learned this from the guards who brought her meals. Friendly young soldiers who seemed genuinely interested in making her comfortable. They answered her questions patiently, explained the station's layout, even offered to arrange tours of the non-restricted areas. It was deeply unsettling. Sarath had been trained to expect certain things from captivity: interrogation, deprivation, psychological pressure designed to break her will and extract information. Instead, she received regular meals, clean clothing, access to recreational facilities, and polite conversation with her captors. On her third day at Haven, she was invited to join Commander Vance for dinner. The dining room was small but comfortable, decorated with artwork that Sarath did not recognize. Paintings of landscapes mostly, green hills and blue oceans and white clouds drifting across golden skies. Earth, she realized. These were images of Earth. Thank you for joining me, Vance said as Sarath took her seat. I hope your accommodations have been satisfactory. They are adequate. Sarath refused to show gratitude to her captor, even if that captor was treating her with unexpected kindness. Vance smiled slightly, as if she understood the game. I wanted to speak with you before we send our message to your government. There are things you should know, things that might help you understand what is about to happen. I am listening. Humanity has been aware of the Velkhari Dominion for nearly a century. We detected your expansion across the region long before you noticed us. We watched you conquer system after system, absorbing smaller species into your empire. We studied your methods, your technology, your culture. Sarath felt a chill run through her. A century? The Velkhari had only discovered humanity 30 years ago. How was it possible that these primitives had been watching them for so long? You are lying, she said automatically. I am not. When your scouts first entered our system, we allowed them to see what we wanted them to see. Small patrol vessels, outdated weapons, defensive postures. We presented ourselves as weak and harmless because we wanted to be left alone. We hoped that if we seemed insignificant, your government would lose interest. That did not work. No, it did not. Your admirals saw an easy target. They saw a system they could add to their empire whenever they felt like it. They sent probe after probe, gathering intelligence for an eventual invasion. Vance's expression hardened. They never considered that we might be gathering intelligence too. What do you mean? Vance touched a control panel embedded in the table. A holographic display appeared between them, showing a map of Velkhari space. 200 star systems, each one marked with detailed information. Fleet deployments, Vance said. Economic data, political structures, military capabilities. We know everything about the Dominion, Captain. We know where your ships are stationed, what weapons they carry, how they are commanded. We know which of your worlds are prosperous and which are struggling. We know which of your leaders are competent and which are fools. Sarath stared at the display in horror. The information was accurate, more than accurate. It was comprehensive. The humans knew more about the Dominion than most Dominion citizens. How? She whispered. We placed passive sensors throughout your territory decades ago. Undetectable probes that drift through your systems, recording everything and transmitting it back to Earth. We have been inside your communication networks for years, reading your messages, listening to your plans. Your government has no secrets from us. The implications were staggering. Every tactical advantage the Dominion thought it possessed was meaningless. Every surprise attack they might have planned was already anticipated. The humans had not been hiding in their little system, hoping to be overlooked. They had been preparing. You could have destroyed us at any time, Sarath said. Yes. Why did you not? Vance leaned back in her chair, and for a moment her professional mask slipped. Sarath saw something underneath, something that looked almost like sadness. Because we did not want to. Captain, humanity has a long and terrible history of violence. We have fought countless wars among ourselves. We have developed weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. We have stared into the abyss of extinction and pulled back only at the last moment. She paused. We learned, eventually, that the ability to destroy is not strength. The choice not to destroy is strength. We swore that when we reached the stars, we would not repeat the mistakes of our past. Pretty words, Sarath said bitterly, but words do not stop invasions. No, they do not. That is why we also developed the capability to defend ourselves. The technology you have experienced aboard your ship is only a fraction of what we possess. We hoped we would never need to use it. We hoped that peaceful coexistence would be possible. Vance's eyes met Sarath's. Your government made that hope very difficult to maintain. Sarath had no response. Everything she had believed about humanity was crumbling. They were not primitives. They were not farmers scratching out an existence on a single world. They were a species that had chosen to hide its true nature, that had deliberately presented itself as weak in order to avoid conflict, and her people had mistaken that choice for inability. What happens now? Sarath asked. Now we send our message. We will transmit complete technical readouts of all 9 captured vessels, proving that we have them. We will include crew manifests confirming that everyone is alive. We will offer to return everything and everyone in exchange for a simple agreement. Respect our borders, leave us in peace, and this matter ends. They will not accept. Perhaps. But we have to make the offer. We have to give them every chance to choose wisely. And if they refuse? Vance was quiet for a long moment. Then we will be forced to demonstrate that our restraint was a choice, not a limitation. We will make it clear that war with humanity would be the last mistake the Dominion ever makes. Sarath studied the human commander, trying to read her intentions. There was no boasting in Vance's words, no pride or eagerness, only a kind of weary determination. You do not want this, Sarath realized. No, we have no desire for conquest, no interest in ruling over other species. We want to trade, to explore, to learn. We want neighbors, not subjects. Vance sighed. But we have also learned that sometimes peace requires making others understand the cost of war. Your government does not respect us. They do not fear us. They see us as prey. We must change that perception one way or another. The message was sent the next day. Sarath watched from an observation deck as a small human courier ship departed the station, carrying data packets that would shake the foundations of the Velkari Dominion. She felt strangely calm, despite everything. There was nothing more she could do. The waiting began. On Velkari Prime, the heart of the Dominion, Fleet Admiral Torvex was enjoying his morning meal when his aide burst into his chambers with a face the color of ash. Admiral, we have received a transmission from Earth space. You need to see this immediately. Torvex followed the aide to the communications center, annoyed at the interruption. When he saw what was on the screens, his annoyance transformed into something much colder. Technical specifications for 9 Velkari warships, including the Dominion's Pride. Complete crew manifest showing 437 personnel, all listed as alive and in good health. and a message delivered in flawless Velkari by Secretary General Chen Wei. People of the Velkari Dominion, we send you this information as proof of our good faith. Your ships entered our space without authorization. They were warned to leave. They refused. We captured them without loss of life on either side. We have treated their crews with dignity and respect. We return what is yours because we desire peace, not victory. We ask only that you honor our borders and cease your incursions. If you agree to these terms, your people and ships will be returned immediately. If you refuse, the consequences will be yours alone to bear. Torvex stared at the screen for a long time. Then he began issuing orders. Within hours, the Dominion's leadership was in chaos. Hawks demanded immediate retaliation, arguing that accepting the human offer would be an unforgivable humiliation. They called for a fleet mobilization, a massive strike against Earth that would teach these primitives their place. Moderates pointed out that 9 Velkari warships had been captured without casualties. They asked what would happen if the Dominion sent 90 ships or 900. If humanity could disable military vessels without even firing weapons, what else could they do? The supreme leader, an aging politician named Kethris, who had held power for 3 decades, listened to both sides without revealing his own thoughts. He had built his empire on strength, on the projection of overwhelming force. The idea that a single-system species had humiliated his military was intolerable. But the technical data was troubling. His scientists had analyzed the information, trying to understand how the humans had disabled the captured ships. They could not explain it. The methods used were beyond anything in their research programs. It was as if humanity was operating with technology from the far future. "Summon Captain Sarath," the Supreme Leader ordered. "I want to hear her account directly." The request was sent through diplomatic channels. To everyone's surprise, the humans agreed immediately. Within a week, Sarath was standing before the Dominion Council, telling her story. She described the capture of her ship in precise detail. The phantom images that confused her sensors, the power fluctuations that disabled her systems, the human Marines who boarded without resistance, and the revelation that shook her to her core. 7 other ships, intact and maintained, their crews alive and well. "They could have destroyed us at any moment," Sarath said. "They chose to capture us instead. They chose to treat us with respect. They chose to return us unharmed." She paused, gathering her courage. "With respect, Supreme Leader, I must ask, what kind of enemy does this? What kind of enemy captures your soldiers and treats them better than we treat our own citizens?" The chamber erupted in angry shouting. Some called Sarath a traitor, corrupted by human propaganda. Others demanded to know why she had surrendered without a fight. A few, very few, listened to her words with thoughtful expressions. The Supreme Leader raised his hand for silence. "You recommend capitulation?" he asked. "I recommend wisdom," Sarath replied. "I recommend that we accept the human offer. We have nothing to lose except pride and everything to gain. Peace with humanity opens trade routes, diplomatic opportunities, access to technology we cannot imagine. War with humanity—" She trailed off. "Speak," the Supreme Leader commanded. "War with humanity means extinction. They have been watching us for a century. They know everything about us. They have technology we cannot understand, weapons we cannot counter. If we attack them, we will lose. Not just the war, but everything. Our ships, our worlds, our people. They will destroy us, not because they want to, but because we will leave them no choice." The Supreme Leader dismissed her with a wave. She was escorted from the chamber, but her words remained behind, hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. The debate continued for days. In the end, pride won. It always did. The Supreme Leader ordered the fleet mobilized. 300 warships would converge on Earth space, overwhelming whatever defenses the humans might possess through sheer numbers. The attack would be swift and devastating. The primitives would learn the cost of defying the Dominion. On Haven Station, Commander Vance received word of the decision through her intelligence networks. She had known it would come to this. Some lessons could only be taught the hard way. "Notify Earth Command," she ordered. "The Dominion has chosen war." The message was sent. The preparations began, and across human space, ships that had been hidden for decades began to power up their engines. ready at last to reveal what humanity was truly capable of. The Velkari fleet gathered at the staging point, 300 warships bristling with weapons and burning with pride. Admiral Torvex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion Eternal, surveying his forces with satisfaction. This was the largest military operation in Dominion history, a hammer that would crush the human insolence once and for all. His captains were eager for battle. They had been told stories of human weakness, of primitive technology, and cowardly tactics. The loss of 9 scouts was explained away as bad luck and incompetence. The real fleet, the true power of the Dominion, would show these farmers what war actually looked like. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "Jump coordinates calculated. We can begin the assault on your command." Torvex allowed himself a moment of anticipation. When this was over, his name would be remembered for 1,000 years. The admiral who destroyed humanity, the warrior who proved that the Dominion bowed to no one. "Begin the assault," he ordered. 300 ships engaged their faster-than-light drives. Space twisted around them, folding distance into manageable dimensions. They would arrive in Earth's system within minutes, overwhelming any resistance through sheer numerical superiority. What they found when they arrived was not what they expected. The human system was quiet. A single planet orbited a yellow star, surrounded by the usual clutter of asteroid belts and gas giants. Initial scans showed minimal military presence. A few orbital platforms, some scattered patrol vessels, nothing that could challenge the assembled might of the Dominion. "Where are their defenses?" Torvex demanded. "Uncertain," his tactical officer replied. "Sensors are having difficulty penetrating the inner system. There appears to be some kind of interference. Increase power to the sensors. Find them." The fleet advanced cautiously, spreading out into a standard attack formation. Fighters launched from carrier ships, forming a protective screen around the larger vessels. Weapons charged and locked onto potential targets. Every captain waited for the order to begin the slaughter. The interference grew stronger. Sensors flickered and produced contradictory readings. Some showed thousands of contacts ahead. Others showed nothing at all. The communications network became unreliable. Messages arriving garbled or not at all. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, his voice strained, "I am detecting multiple anomalies on the outer perimeter. They appear to be ships." "How many?" "I cannot tell. The readings keep changing. Sometimes they show dozens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes nothing." Torvex felt the first stirrings of unease. This was similar to what Captain Sarath had described, the phantom images that had confused her sensors before her ship was disabled. But surely that trick could not work against an entire fleet. "All ships, hold position," he ordered. "Form defensive groupings and await further orders." The fleet stopped its advance. 300 warships hung in the void, weapons ready, crews tense. And then the interference vanished. What appeared before them was impossible. A wall of ships stretched across space, more vessels than Torvex had ever seen in one place. Thousands of them, ranging from small patrol craft to enormous battleships that dwarfed anything in the Velkari arsenal. They had not approached. They had not jumped in. They had simply revealed themselves, dropping whatever camouflage had hidden them from sensors. "That is not possible," someone whispered. The display showed the count. 4,200 human warships, all of them armed, all of them ready for battle. The Dominion fleet was outnumbered more than 10 to 1. "Admiral, we are being hailed," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." Secretary General Chen Wei's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Admiral Torvex, this is Secretary General Chen Wei of the United Earth Government. You have entered human space with hostile intent. You were warned that this action would have consequences. You chose to ignore that warning." Chen Wei's voice was calm, almost sad. "We gave your government every opportunity to choose peace. You chose war. Now you must face the reality of that choice." Torvex found his voice. "You think numbers alone can frighten us? We are the Velkari Dominion. We have conquered 200 worlds. Your fleet may be larger, but we have the finest warriors in the galaxy. This is not about numbers, Admiral. This is about capability." Chen Wei gestured, and the display changed. "Let me show you what you face." The human fleet began to move. Not chaotically, Not in the confused jumble that Torvex might have expected from a hastily assembled defense force. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, thousands of vessels acting as one. They flowed around the Dominion formation like water around a stone, surrounding it completely without a single collision or overlap. And then, as a demonstration of power, every human ship fired simultaneously. Not at the Valkyrie fleet, at empty space beyond them. Thousands of weapons discharged at once, painting the void with light. The energy readings were off the scale. More firepower in a single volley than the Dominion could have mustered in a month of continuous bombardment. That was a fraction of our capability, Chenwei said. A demonstration, nothing more. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons are already being targeted by systems you cannot detect. If we choose to fire, you will all be dead within seconds. Torvex looked at his tactical display. It confirmed everything the human was saying. His ships were boxed in, trapped within a cage of overwhelming force. There was no escape, no tactical option, no hope of victory. "What do you want?" he asked. "The same thing we have always wanted. Peace. You will order your fleet to power down weapons and surrender. Your crews will be taken into custody and treated humanely. Your ships will be impounded until a formal peace agreement is reached." Chen Wei's expression softened slightly. "We will not harm your people, Admiral. We have no desire for vengeance, but this invasion must end here. And if I refuse, then you and every soul under your command will die within the next 30 seconds. Your families will receive notification of your deaths. Your supreme leader will receive footage of your destruction, and the next Valkyrie fleet that enters our space will face the same fate." Torvex looked around his bridge. His officers stared back at him, their faces pale with fear. These were proud warriors, men and women who had built their careers on courage and honor. But there was no honor in suicide. There was no courage in leading 400,000 people to meaningless deaths. "All ships," he said slowly, "power down weapons. Prepare for boarding." The surrender was orderly. Human Marines boarded each Valkyrie vessel, securing weapons and taking crews into custody. There was no resistance. The overwhelming display of force had broken whatever fighting spirit the Dominion officers might have possessed. Torvex was transported to a human command ship, where he was met by Commander Vance. She treated him with cool professionalism, neither gloating nor offering false sympathy. "Your crews will be taken to holding facilities," and she explained. "They will be provided with food, medical care, and comfortable quarters. No one will be harmed." "Why?" Torvex asked. "You have defeated us. You have captured our fleet. Why show mercy now?" Vance considered the question. "Because we were not always merciful, Admiral. Once, long ago, humanity believed that victory meant destruction. We crushed our enemies, burned their cities, scattered their people. We won countless wars and gained nothing but more enemies. More hatred, more reasons for the next war." She paused. "We learned eventually that true victory is not making your enemy fear you. True victory is making your enemy want to be your friend. That is naive." "Is it? Look at your situation, Admiral. We have demonstrated that we can destroy the Dominion whenever we choose. We have shown that your military is no match for ours, and yet we offer you peace. We offer you trade, diplomacy, partnership. We offer you a future where your people prosper instead of dying in pointless conflicts." Vance met his eyes. "What would you choose if you were in our position? Vengeance or opportunity?" Torvex had no answer. On Valkyrie Prime, the Supreme Leader watched the footage in silence. His entire invasion fleet, 300 warships, surrendered without firing a single shot. 400,000 soldiers, captured and imprisoned by the primitives he had dismissed as unworthy of concern. The images from the battle, if it could even be called that, were being broadcast across the Dominion. Citizens watched in horror as the scale of the defeat became clear. 4,000 human warships, each one more advanced than anything the Valkyrie possessed. A wall of steel and energy that had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the invasion fleet like a predator closing in on its prey. And the humans had not even tried to kill them. "We are finished," one of his advisors said quietly. "If they can do this to 300 ships, what happens when they come for our worlds?" The Supreme Leader turned to face his council. These were the men and women who had urged him toward war, who had dismissed the human threat, who had promised easy victory. Now they looked at him with fear in their eyes, waiting for him to save them from the consequences of their own arrogance. "Contact the humans," he said at last. "Request a diplomatic meeting. We will discuss their terms." The message was sent within the hour. To everyone's surprise, the humans agreed immediately. Secretary General Chen Wei would meet with the Supreme Leader aboard a neutral station, accompanied only by essential staff. No weapons, no threats, no ultimatums, just conversation. The meeting was scheduled for 3 days later. The entire galaxy watched and waited. In the holding facilities, Admiral Torvex was given access to communication equipment that allowed him to speak with his family. He told them he was alive, that he was being treated well, that he hoped to see them soon. They wept with relief. He spent his remaining time in captivity talking with the human guards, learning about their world and their history. They were not the primitives he had imagined. They were complex, contradictory, capable of both great cruelty and great kindness. They had fought terrible wars among themselves and somehow emerged with a commitment to peace that seemed almost spiritual. When he asked them why they had chosen mercy over destruction, they gave him the same answer Commander Vance had given. "Because we learned what happens when you don't. We learned that hatred breeds hatred, that vengeance creates enemies, that the cycle of violence never ends unless someone chooses to end it." One young Marine shrugged. "We decided to be the ones who made that choice." Torvex thought about his own career. The worlds he had conquered, the species he had crushed, the enemies he had made with every victory. He had believed that strength meant dominance, that power meant fear. The humans believed something very different. And looking at the ruins of his fleet, at the overwhelming force that surrounded him, he could not help but wonder if they were right. 6 months had passed since the surrender of the Dominion fleet. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Velkari Empire that had once dominated 200 star systems was fracturing, its authority undermined by the stunning revelation of its military weakness. A dozen worlds had already declared independence. 3 more were in open rebellion. And through it all, humanity waited. Secretary General Chen Wei sat in his office on Earth, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Dominion was falling apart, collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. He could have accelerated the process, could have supported the rebellions and watched the empire burn. His military commanders had suggested exactly that. He had refused. "We did not fight this war to destroy them," he told his staff. "We fought to change them. Destruction is easy. Transformation is hard. We choose the hard path." The Supreme Leader's request for a summit had arrived 3 days after the surrender. Chen Wei had accepted immediately, knowing that this was the moment humanity had been working toward for decades. The confrontation was over. Now came the real challenge. The summit took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. The Supreme Leader arrived with a small delegation, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. Chen Wei met them with a delegation of his own, carefully selected for their diplomatic skills rather than their military ranks. Commander Vance was there, along with Admiral Torvex and Captain Sarath. The 2 Velkari officers had been released from custody specifically for this meeting. Chen Wei believed that their presence might help bridge the gap between species. The first day was spent on formalities, introductions, protocols, the careful dance of diplomacy that preceded any serious negotiation. The Supreme Leader was stiff and defensive, clearly expecting harsh terms and humiliating conditions. He did not get them. "We ask for nothing that we have not already asked for," Chen Wei said when the formal talks began. "Honor our borders. Cease all hostile incursions into human space. Treat our citizens with respect and our diplomats with courtesy. In exchange, we will return your fleet, your soldiers, and your captured personnel. All of them, unharmed." The Supreme Leader stared at him. "That is all? That is all? No reparations? No territorial concessions? No limits on our military development?" Chen Wei shook his head. "We have no interest in weakening the Dominion. We have no desire to rule over your people or interfere in your internal affairs. We want only to be left alone." "That seems insufficient." given what you could demand. Perhaps, Chen Wei leaned forward. Let me tell you a story, Supreme Leader. Thousands of years ago, my ancestors fought a great war against a neighboring kingdom. It was a brutal conflict that lasted for generations. Finally, one side won a decisive victory. They could have destroyed their enemies, enslaved their people, erased their culture from history. Instead, they offered generous terms. They treated the defeated with respect and dignity. They allowed them to keep their lands, their traditions, their pride. And what happened? The two kingdoms eventually merged. The former enemies became allies, then friends, then family. Together, they built one of the greatest civilizations in human history. Chen Wei spread his hands. We learn from that story. We learn that the way you treat a defeated enemy determines whether they remain an enemy or become something else entirely. The Supreme Leader was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. Why? Why would you show such restraint to people who tried to destroy you? Because we remember what happens when you do not show restraint. We remember the wars that lasted centuries because victors were too proud to offer peace. We remember the hatreds that burned across generations because someone chose vengeance over wisdom. Chen Wei's voice was gentle but firm. We have learned, Supreme Leader, we have learned that strength is not the ability to destroy. Strength is the ability to choose not to destroy. We have that ability. We make that choice. And we hope that someday your people will understand why. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Details were hammered out, agreements drafted, protocols established. The peace treaty that emerged was remarkably simple: mutual recognition of borders, freedom of navigation along established trade routes, exchange of ambassadors and establishment of diplomatic relations, a framework for future cooperation in matters of mutual interest. Nothing punitive, nothing humiliating, nothing that could be used to justify future conflicts. When the signing ceremony concluded, the Supreme Leader approached Chen Wei privately. I do not understand you, he admitted. I do not understand your people. Everything I have been taught says that you should have destroyed us when you had the chance. Everything I know about power says that mercy is weakness. Chen Wei smiled slightly. Everything you know about power comes from a universe where the strong dominate the weak. We come from a different universe, one where the strong protect the weak, where power creates responsibility, where victory is measured not by what you take, but by what you give. That sounds like philosophy, not policy. Perhaps, but look at the results. Chen Wei gestured at the signed treaty. Your fleet is being returned. Your soldiers are going home to their families. Your empire, though changed, will survive. And in exchange, we have peace. Real peace, not the temporary cessation of hostilities that precedes the next war. Is that not worth more than any amount of territory or treasure? The Supreme Leader had no response. In the months that followed, the changes came slowly but steadily. Trade routes opened between human space and the Dominion. Diplomatic missions were exchanged. Cultural programs introduced each species to the other's art, music, literature, philosophy. Admiral Torvex retired from military service and became an advocate for the peace process. He traveled across the Dominion, telling his story to anyone who would listen. The humans captured 9 ships and showed mercy, he explained. They captured 300 more and showed mercy again. They had every reason to hate us, every justification for vengeance, and they chose peace instead. Not everyone listened. There were those who clung to old hatreds, who insisted that the humans were simply waiting for the right moment to strike. But their numbers dwindled with each passing year as the benefits of peace became impossible to deny. Captain Sarath, promoted to admiral in recognition of her role in the peace process, was assigned to command the 1st Joint Human Velker Patrol Squadron. She worked alongside Commander Vance, who had also been promoted, leading a fleet that protected trade routes and responded to emergencies regardless of which species called for help. They became friends, unlikely as that might have seemed. 2 officers from opposite sides of a war that had never quite happened, united by a shared understanding of what their peoples could become if they chose to build instead of destroy. One evening, as they shared a meal aboard Sarath's flagship, Vance asked her a question that had been on her mind for years. When you were captured, when you realized how badly the Dominion had misjudged us, what did you think? Sareth considered the question carefully. I thought that we were doomed, that humanity would use its power to crush us, just as we would have crushed you if our positions had been reversed. I thought mercy was impossible. And now? Now I understand that mercy was always possible. We simply never tried it. Sareth looked out at the stars visible through the viewport. When I was young, I was taught that the universe was a place of competition and conflict. The strong survived, the weak perished, and there was no room for sentiment. But the humans proved that this was a lie. They proved that strength and compassion are not opposites. They proved that the universe can be whatever we choose to make it. Vance nodded slowly. That is what we hoped you would learn. Was that the plan all along? To capture our ships instead of destroying them? To treat our people with kindness? To give us every chance to choose peace? Yes. How did you know it would work? Vance smiled. We did not know. We hoped. We believed. We took a risk that most species would consider insane. We bet everything on the idea that even our enemies could change, given the chance. She paused. We were right. The Galactic Assembly met to discuss the Human-Valkyrie Peace Treaty, the same assembly that had laughed when Chen Wei delivered his warning years before. No one was laughing now. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, not through conquest but through example. Other species watched what humanity had done and wondered if they could do the same. Some began to reach out, seeking trade agreements and diplomatic relations with Earth. Others held back, still suspicious of human motives. But the conversation had changed. For the first time in galactic history, there was serious discussion about alternatives to war. Chen Wei addressed the assembly one final time, speaking not as a representative of humanity, but as an advocate for a new way of thinking. We stand at a crossroads, he said. We can continue as we always have, fighting over resources and territory and pride, watching civilizations rise and fall in endless cycles of violence. Or we can choose a different path. We can recognize that we are stronger together than apart. We can build something new, something that our ancestors could not have imagined. He paused, looking out at the representatives of 200 species. Humanity made its choice long ago. We chose to hide our strength because we did not want to frighten others. We chose to show mercy because we remembered what happened when we did not. We chose peace because we knew that war, in the end, destroys everything it claims to protect. He spread his hands. We cannot force you to follow our example. We can only offer it. The choice, as always, is yours. Years later, when historians wrote about the Earth-Dominion conflict, they focused on the ninth ship, the ship that never reported back, the ship whose silence should have warned the Valkyrie that something was wrong. They noted that humanity could have announced its capabilities at any time. They could have flexed their military muscle, demanded respect through fear, forced the galaxy to acknowledge their power. Instead, they waited. They captured ship after ship, officer after officer, hoping that someone would notice, hoping that someone would ask questions. The ninth ship was never meant to be a casualty report. It was meant to be an invitation. And in the end, enough people accepted that invitation to change the course of galactic history. In her quarters aboard her flagship, Admiral Sareth kept a small reminder of those days, a photograph showing her standing beside Commander Vance, both of them smiling, taken on the day the peace treaty was signed. Behind them, visible through a window, was the station where 9 Valkyrie ships had been held captive, their crews treated as guests rather than prisoners. When young officers asked her about the war that almost was, she told them about that station. She told them about the humans who could have destroyed her, but chose to teach her instead. She told them about the mercy that seemed like weakness until you understood it as strength. And she always ended with the same words, the same lesson that had taken her a lifetime to understand. The humans were not waiting for our fleet, she would say. They were waiting for us to stop fighting long enough to listen. Once we did, we discovered that they had been offering us something far more valuable than our pride. They had been offering us hope. The ninth ship never reported back because it carried a message that could not be spoken, a message that had to be lived, experienced, understood from the inside. A message that the Velkari, and eventually the entire galaxy, would learn to embrace. Some lessons can only be taught through mercy, some victories can only be won through restraint, and some ships are meant to be captured, not destroyed, so that their crews can become the first ambassadors of a new and better world.